want you all just to introduce yourselves, talk about, with your organization. But before you do that, I want you to just tell us how you are doing personally, how you are doing, and how you're feeling, and then talk about your organization and what you're doing during COVID. So we'll start with you, Lakisha.
Hey, Curtis, before we get started, because I'm just seeing that we're streaming live on Facebook, I got to go back for a second because you gave a dedication to our girl, but I don't think we were all on Facebook. So I don't know if you want to give that real quick again, or should I give it before I go into it?
I'll do it real quick. So, I have t-shirts from all four of your organizations, and I was deciding on which shirt to represent today. I could have tried to sew all four of them together, but that might have looked a little funny. But I thought about this shirt in particular because I was handed this shirt by an amazing woman, amazing member of the Oakland Reach family by the name of Rachel Willis. And the four of us were together. The last time the five of us were together in the same spot, we were in Oakland, and she was with us. And, I think about her spirit, particularly her fire as a mother of two, demanding, educational equity for her children. And I just wanted to bring that spirit to this event because, like I said, when I came to that table, she handed me this shirt, and from that point on, her spirit has been with me and been with all five of us. And so, with that, I do want to give you an opportunity, Lakisha, to tell us how you're doing personally, but also about your organization and what you all are doing now under COVID.
Thank you, Curtis. I mean, you kind of blew me away a little bit with that dedication. Rachel passed on October 23rd, and I personally have actually not been the same. In terms of that. And so it means a lot that you brought her spirit. There's a little echoing happening. It's amazing that you guys have you just brought her spirit to this conversation. So I hope it fuels all of us. I'm looking at Bryan and Sarah and like kind of Bryan hanging with her, like all of these sort of amazing things. And just thank you, Curtis. I think you kind of started us off way more emotional than we was planning to, but I think it also like fuels me as a woman, as a leader too. So I just wanted to note that. In terms of like how I'm doing personally, I'm doing fine. I feel blessed. My kids are healthy. My family's healthy so far. So I feel blessed, but it's getting harder. We're getting more into the weeks of shelter in place. And California, we did an early shutdown. So we've been shut down for over a month now. So it's just tricky, but I also see less air pollution. I can also go out and like smell the air better and take a walk. I don't feel as like tense and stressed. For those of us that are on this call, like we do some really hard work. And so sometimes it's just good to like know we can do that work and still support families and just maybe just have a little bit of time to reflect. We don't really get time to reflect as leaders. So, and then the last part that I'll answer for you, Curtis, is that similar to my partners on this, my first cousins on this webinar, is we are all, we're a parent-led advocacy organization. Our whole purpose, every time I get up in the morning, it's like stuff ain't right and how do we make it better? And not just make it better, how do we totally like burn down what exists and create something different? Because I don't even know if better is going to be good enough for our kids anymore. And so, our work has really just led us to kind of shift the system and create policies and campaigns to do that. So we've done that through the opportunity ticket. And then obviously pre-COVID, we were in a really, really good stride with our literacy campaign that we are now shifting and evolving to this new sort of like virtual reality. And I can talk more about that when it's time, but that's what's happening in Oakland. And then our families, we did launch a relief fund, which I think I'll talk about later as well. And so we'll talk about how our team is responding to that. But that's what's happening in Oakland.
No, thank you very much. And I believe we have a new model for this, which is better is not good enough for our kids. That's going to be a t-shirt right there. Make sure they give us credit for that. Give you credit for that because they copyrights on that. But Kimberly, Dirty South, what's going on down there in Atlanta?
Okay, right here in Atlanta, it's hard. It's scary because they are lifting our shelter in place order. So for families that I fight for every day, it's extremely scary. If parents don't understand how to keep their kids safe during this time, it's heartbreaking. We're not only going to lose our kids from not being educated, but also to this COVID-19 piece. But as a mother of 10 kids, um, working with 9 kids on 9 different levels, trying to homeschool and work from home, it's overwhelming, but also working with families in the community to trying to help them figure it out and be the bridge between the communities and the schools to ensure that the kids are getting the things that they're supposed to have so that parents can help push them forward, and trying to connect the parents that don't know what to do right now to mentors and college students that can help the kids with the work, because it's overwhelming for parents. A lot of my parents, they work on the front line, so they have these essential jobs. So to come home and help 5 and 6 kids through homework, schoolwork, and they don't know where to start and they can't call and ask for help. It's overwhelming, but like Lakisha said, we're on the front line and we're open and up to doing it. And right here in Atlanta, I don't know if you guys know, we've just been appointed a new superintendent. So for Atlanta, we're trying to make sure like we recreate anew. Like Lakisha said and Miss Sarah say all the time, we won't go back. It's only moving forward. But I'm trying to make sure every parent in Atlanta have a new way of looking at things and imagining the new.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Sarah Carpenter, Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh, hello. I am Sarah Carpenter. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I'm the mother of 4 grown daughters and the grandmother of 15 and the great grandmother of MJ, 1. We added 5 girls to our family, and I got 3 seniors this year. 2 of the girls are seniors, and my biological grandson is a senior. And I talked to Jada this morning, and Jada is the first in her family, and she got older siblings, and she will be the first in her family to graduate high school. And that took my mind somewhere. It took my mind back to my own family, because my oldest granddaughter was the first in 4 generations to graduate from college. So, y'all, and that was huge for us in our family. You know, we went to Lane College like Kentoria, like the Beverly Hillbillies. I talk about it all the time. Even my mom got to go. I mean, and when we made it to the dorm, it was like, all of y'all can't come here. It was all of us. And we wanted those little ones to experience that also. So it's tough. My kids think I'm crazy right now. I feel crazy sometimes because I'm used to being out and about, but I'm trying to stay safe. And for me, I worry about my grandchildren because my daughters have to work, and they still work, and they done work through all this stuff. And I know they are not teachers. And I always say, I want our parents to know we don't know really what to do either, because we're not teachers. Now, if you're a teacher or you ever been a teacher, you know what to do. But I don't even know what to do. And my daughters don't know what to do. So, I mean, and that's what I'm finding in Memphis, talking to parents, they like lost. Everything have stopped. Learning have stopped for most of our parents because they're not teachers. And it's so important as advocates that I tell them all the time, I don't know what to do either, but we trying to find the resources for them to know what to do. I advocated for one lady with 7 kids to get computers for her kids, you know. My grandkids have computers, you know. One teacher told a parent, I cried yesterday morning. I just was so upset because we got a call from a parent got 7 kids in 4 different schools. And the teacher told her to use her one phone and spread it around with the kids. That don't work at my house because Caleb needs something that LaJerica needs. LaJerica needs something that Elijah needs. You know, and kids just don't get along like that when you passing one item around. So I just know we got so much work to do, and all I can do is keep trying to find the resources. And we had a relief fund in Memphis also where we help families, and y'all, the needs are great. Some of these parents not used to kids being at home all day. You got to feed 7 kids breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they not used to that. Light bill still due, rent still due, and some of our parents can't even work. So that's where we are in Memphis.
No, I appreciate that. And I'm going to be touching on a lot of what you all mentioned as well. I know folks who are listening in want to hear more about that. But I did want to give my brother Bryan with the nice hat on, bring the rear on this, man. How are things going in Jersey, brother?
Jersey, I mean, if you watch CNN, we're sort of at the edge of the center of the pandemic because of our northern border. Shout out, I see some North people, my North people listening in already. So shelter in place, we know, is going to continue. Unlike our neighboring states of New York and Pennsylvania, New Jersey parents don't know whether or not their kids are going back to school this year. The other two states have already closed. So, you know, the next steps that organizations or parents, you know, are pressing for are much different than what we're pressing for, right? Here in Camden, you know, we're still completing phase 1, 30 days into a lockdown, of getting computers to every kid, right? So that still hasn't been completed. And simultaneous to that, my organization is working with Comcast to make sure that families can really take advantage of a program that's called Comcast Essentials. I think it's nationwide, where if your child receives free or reduced lunch, they can get internet for $9.95 a month. And Comcast is waiving the first 2 months right now to make sure that everybody can get internet in their home, because we know in Camden, like similar other places across the country, not every household has access to internet. And in fact, in Camden, less than 45% of households actually had internet in the homes, and less than 35% actually had some type of device, whether it's a phone, you know, a tablet, etc. So we had a number of hurdles we had to jump over just to make sure kids had the potential to learn. Now, whether or not they're learning, you know, is something else, because the burden has shifted totally to parents to become the educator in home, while schools and districts are still trying to solve how to get technology in kids' hands, let alone to keep them connected. So it's a tremendous amount of work, along with all the other things that my counterparts have said, that makes not just education in Camden or in urban areas a struggle. You know, I think this is happening in rural parts and other parts, but there are examples of communities of affluence that have solved it. And, you know, there are best practice examples that I don't see replicated yet. Like, I watch universities teach online every day with professors in front of their students, schedules set up, you know, so that the learning can continue. So I'm really interested, if we're going to finish out the school year, what does that really look like? And the second part is, if we're saying kids won't return to school, what does virtual learning really look like? And then the third piece, Curtis, is looking at the possible reoccurrence. How are we going to make sure that we're creating 2 simultaneous train tracks? One for a potential return to education as normal in the fall, right? And then one with a potential a return, but an interruption in January, February, or March of next year, where the shift goes back to virtual. And how are we going to respond to that? So, you know, we're playing through all of that stuff here, but we're just still trying to make sure people can get connected and people get access to technology, and then we'll figure out, are they actually learning?
And I appreciate that. And I appreciate everything that you all are doing. And, you know, there's a saying that, you know, when America catches a cold, you know, African Americans catch pneumonia. And right now, economically, you know, we're going through a recession. Will be, I imagine, but the disproportionate impact on communities like ours is being felt. In many ways, this COVID sort of magnified a lot of the inequities that were already there, and sort of just, you know, demonstrated issues around food, access to internet, transportation, and just familial support. And so what I want to do is talk a little bit about, you know, some of the things that were going on even prior to COVID that I think have kind of been put on pause because COVID came around, and a lot of the things that you all were fighting for even before people were really paying attention in many ways. And so, Sarah, I wanted to start with you, and then I want to jump to you, Kim. What were schools like? What were you fighting for in Shelby County prior to COVID? This time last year, or last fall, what were you fighting for in Shelby County, Tennessee?
We were working on unified enrollment, where we believe it leveled the playing field for all children to have access to a great school. And Curtis, you keep up with all this stuff. Some of our schools weren't serving the most underserved children before COVID. I just know that we gotta do something different. Now, what it is, I don't know, but I know it's time for parents to stand up and demand something different and know what we left wasn't normal. So we can't go back. We can't say we won't go back to normal because it wasn't normal anyway. And that's what we've been fighting for. And access to great schools, all children, access to great schools. And people come into our community with a preconceived notion that poor children can't learn. That's not true. Some of our most successful Black people in this city came from the projects. Our first Black mayor came from, I think it was Lamont Gardens. That was the project. So I don't want to keep hearing people say that poor kids can't learn, and that's what we hear a lot.
Kim, talk about Atlanta. How are African American students doing in your city, even as early as last year? And what were some of the things that you all at Thrive were fighting for?
So we've been fighting. Well, we were in the middle of a strategic planning process, and we were pushing for an equity policy so that they can set clear measure for the chronically failing schools. So parents were asking, if a school is failing for a certain amount of time, something should be done. They passed the policy, but it wasn't under those strict measures. So we have a 60% gap in Black and white graduation rate, which is clearly a problem. Dealing with this COVID piece, right now I have a senior. I have not received a phone call from a graduation coach or a counselor. So that's me, a parent that's at every board meeting, a parent that's very involved. So I can only imagine what other parents are going through. And if you have a parent, like Miss Sarah say, this is the first generation that a child will go to college in their family, then parents don't know what to do. So not only did the educational component stop, but the help to get the kids on the right path to the next the secondary education is an issue also.
Thank you. And Sarah, you brought up something about whether we're going to go back or if we can't go back. And so I'm asking Sloan, like my colleague, there's a survey question that we've already given those who joined the call, which is sort of what their background is and what they bring to this conversation, whether it be a student, a parent, an educator, an advocate, or policymaker. And we're asking those who are on the call to sort of fill out this survey and really give us an indication of who's listening in and where the voices are being heard within this group. So for those who are on this Zoom, if you could complete this as soon as you can, but this is going to help us to gather information. As they're doing that, I did want to throw it to Lakisha, and you touched this a little bit before in your introduction, particularly about what Reach has been doing over the last year as it relates to the opportunity ticket and a lot of the work that you all have really pushed around literacy. Can you talk a little bit more about sort of the pre-COVID work that you all were doing in Oakland?
Yeah, of course. So again, all of our work comes directly from our families. We spend a lot of time listening to and hearing from our families. And so that's how the opportunity ticket came about. And we had that policy, and that policy went in March of last year. But while we were pushing with the advocacy campaign for the opportunity ticket, we're also talking to our families about what was keeping them up at night. And what was keeping our families up at night is this whole concept of like their kids reading. And so part of it was like, I don't know what grade level my kid's on. I don't think my child's on grade level in reading. And when I go to the school to try to get more help, I'm actually just told to read more to my child. I'm having a tough time with the first 20 minutes. Now you want me to do 20 more minutes. So when that happened, we knew quickly we needed to pivot to provide education and tools and support to our families while we understood what the longer fight was going to be. And so that's kind of when we launched this summer literacy workshop, gave our parents an opportunity to get reading assessments with their kids, books, learning about how to have conversations with their parents. But what was so impactful about that summer, which was last year, was we wanted 100 families to go through to participate, and we had 125, and then we had to turn away families. So for me, it was like, oh, families don't just care about this, they'll show up for it. And when you're running campaigns and when you're fighting the system to change a system that's not designed for us to win, you need families that are going to consistently show up. So that's how we ended up moving into launching the Literacy for All campaign. What was very kind of unique about that and interesting is that when we decided to launch this campaign, we obviously got immediately connected with other people in Oakland who were doing work to try to figure out how to, like, we weren't the only people in the city trying to figure out how to help kids read. But what we did understand is that most people were focused on early literacy, because there is a lot of data to show that if you get kids reading earlier, it's just going to be better in the long haul. But like Kim and Sarah and Bryan know from the families we work with, and I'm even a mom, I have a child in elementary school, in middle school, and in high school. I can't turn to that mama and say, we only got a solution for your 7-year-old, but as far as your middle and high schooler, like, we'll get back to you later. And on top of that, so many of our families in the REACH group, like, and not just on our team, but just in our base, like, so many of our families graduated from these schools and they can't read. So we're like, nah. If we're going to run a campaign, this campaign has got to heal the whole community. You can't just provide supports for the 7-year-old and expect that child to change intergenerational poverty when everybody else in the house has gotten a horrible literacy background. So I think what was unique about what we were doing pre-COVID was that we were really pushing the system, the state, and even nationally to be like, if we want to really make reading better for kids and families, we have to make sure the whole community can read, not just that 7-year-old where you can see a couple of years. Yeah, you're going to see 2 years of increased results with that kid because you put a lot of focus on them. But what's going to happen after that? Or how are you going to ensure that child don't go in the pipeline to prison? So you got to help the mama and the grandmamas read too, if you really want to make this sustainable. So that was a huge focus for us prior to COVID.
Thank you. And Sloan, we do have the results of that survey up to see who's on the call. And so just for those who responded, the majority are advocates like you all. And some of them actually will fit into more than one category, whether you're a parent, an educator, and an advocate. But we asked which group they most identify with. And most of those on the call identify with being an advocate, an educator, or a parent. So that's outstanding. I did want to throw it to you, Bryan. And, prior to COVID, you all in Camden have been fighting, tirelessly for educational equity and access. And those who may not know, Camden Public Schools introduced something called Renaissance schools. And these schools have a little more autonomy in exchange for more accountability. And they've shown to improve student achievement. And so my question to you is, how effective were those schools, those schools compared to traditional schools? And, what were you all doing as an organization in support of those schools?
The last part I'll take first. So Renaissance schools came about through a piece of legislation called the Urban Hope Act. And there were 5 cities that had the opportunity to implement these schools, which were partnerships between the district and charter providers. As you said, a little more autonomy, but the partnership with the district meant that they had to serve the same population as the district in terms of special needs students, ELL students, and that they had to provide the services in-house. So it wasn't that they were able to register students and then send them back to the district should they need additional services, right? So it was a way to finally tap into the things that were quote unquote good about the charter model, the autonomy, less red tape model, but still making sure that we were not leaving behind the most neediest students, right? Which we see oftentimes in cities where the district sort of ends up with those families that don't understand how to maneuver through the system, or may lack the inclination to maneuver through the system, might just have an all-out love for whatever. So Renaissance, so parents, so Newark, Patterson, Trenton, Jersey City all had the opportunity, and only Camden took advantage of it because we organized. We founded ourselves in that year. we organized ourselves for the purpose of making sure that Renaissance schools would come in, because parents weren't totally satisfied with charters or the traditional model. We wanted, choice in a third way, and choice is important because it shouldn't be restricted to my ability to choose based on my income as a parent, right? Irregardless, I'm guaranteed under the Constitution to, a quality education. And in New Jersey, we've passed several pieces of legislation that says, economics should not factor into a child getting a great education, right? That should be stripped away. And so in Camden, we were excited about it. And so that's the long story. We fought for it. We knocked on, we started the same time as Sarah started down in Memphis. And I drew a lot of strength from her and a resiliency. We knocked on doors. We engaged people just like it was a campaign. We told, to Kim's point, a lot of people don't know these schools are failing. To Keisha's point, the system failed me as a parent, so I might be embarrassed or too shy to speak out about it. So, or I just think that's par for the course. So it was about doing everything each of us had been doing and getting out there and finally beginning the conversation, Curtis, because if anyone knows about, abuse or the cycle of abuse or the cycle of trauma, one of the cornerstones of both is silence and shame. And so our communities have been shamed into silence because of a system that we had no control over. And so, we were doing that work to bring about Renaissance schools. And the second phase was getting parents into those schools. Those schools are doing tremendously, outpacing their counterparts in the city, but on par with, the state average, and in some instances exceeding, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not good enough, because somebody said it earlier, right? Like anybody can do those moment in time, Keisha, snapshots, right? Oh, they grew, right? We start fooling parents into, growth is more important than proficiency. Okay, no, it's not, right? But it's about having conversations about language with parents, right, Curtis? We use language, right? I remember when I was in prison, right? Somebody told me the word reveal to your ear sounds like to uncover, but if you broke down both roots of the word, it means to reveal something, meaning to recover, right? Something else, because I am revealing, the thing is, so, we're teaching parents about a system that hasn't been built for them. Mm-hmm. How to take the best of it, and in some instances telling them that they have the right to advocate for the creation of new systems that are best suited, for their students and for their communities.
No, thank you, Bryan. I think, we have a second question. We're going to
Curtis, right quick. I love to jump in. I just think it's important for people that's listening to know what's so unique about us, that we are the parents that we serve. We have lived this stuff, so when we go out there and knock on their doors, they can connect with us because we are them.
Yes.
And we tell our own personal stories, and that's why we're so unique. That's just my belief.
And there's an energy.
Not just popping my collar, but I don't look down on no parent. When I knock on their door, I let them know I was that parent sitting at home thinking everything was okay when it wasn't okay. So that's important for parents to know, and advocates and funders, for everybody to know.
But I'll just say, I think the parents that you all work with, the parents that we all work with, are very good at discerning truth from fakeness, and from people showing, integrity and just authenticity. Yes. And when people talk about the four of you, the first word that comes to is authentic. Like when I see Bryan before the panel, after the panel, when I see Bryan during the event, on the street, he's the same guy. When I see Sarah talking to a presidential candidate, when I see her at a PTA meeting, when I see her at home, she is the same. Kimberly don't put on nothing, don't put on an arm for nobody. She is who she is. Keisha is who she is at the White House and when she's down the street. And I think that's the thing that people, I hope people look at you all and say, I want to do that. I need to bring one of these groups to my town. Who should I become? I think the answer is be who you are
That's right. What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And so at this point in time, I do want Sloan, the second question we have, which touches on something you said, Sarah, which is this idea of will schools respond to this period of time? We're going to get to sort of life under COVID. Will school systems and school leaders innovate after COVID, or will they go back to the way they were? Will we learn from this moment, or will we go back to status quo? And in doing so, as that question is put out there, I did want to just kind of outline, schools are closed throughout the country. And even the cities that are, reopening up, schools will remain closed in most of those places. And just this morning, the Colorado Governor Panelists just announced that school systems should be prepared to not have in-person schooling until January. And so they're going to go most likely into the fall, still doing this sort of online virtual system in the state of Colorado. And so obviously we understand this requires, a device. It requires reliable internet connection. It requires an engaged educator, which mean from the school system, tapping through live or recording, but also a parent really equipped to support the learning of these children who are home. And so I wanted to start off with you, Kim, in particular. What is your experience like at home with your 9 children, particularly as a parent in trying to support their learning? And then Sarah, I wanted you to comment after, sort of what are you hearing from your daughters and granddaughters about what their experience is like learning at home under this new virtual learning system?
I gotta check you first, Curtis. It's 10 of them. I have a 3.
Yeah.
You said you had 9 at home, though. You said that. I know you have 10, though.
9 that's in grade level school. So
okay, got you.
I have a 3-year-old, and her teacher check in, and she send emails.
Mhm.
But working with my 6-year-old, he just found out that he's not retaining information. So I was beginning the process of testing around this time. So it's really hard for him because we were sent home with like 3 packages of work. But you can tell that it wasn't tailored to him. It wasn't modified. He don't understand it. And his teacher do reach out. She called, but I need more. It's like every day, 1 hour check-in is not enough. And that's office hours, but that's for everybody in the class. My fifth grader, well, my 3rd grader, he's reading on the 1st grade level. I found it out almost at the end, close to COVID. So making sure that he's online at a certain time. His teacher don't know how to actually use the Google Classroom. So we're all learning this together. So that's one experience. And then when you attempt to do it, and I don't have enough devices for all the kids. So we rotate. So if every child has to be on at 10 o'clock in my house, I have to allow my older kids to get on because these are the kids that's graduating. Or it's like a parent should not have to make that decision who gonna get educated today. And that's what it kind of looks like in my house. But I think it stressed me out the most because my oldest daughter, about her graduating and her suffering with mental health, the social piece is bothering her. So we go days with depression. So it's like 2-3 days her being in her room, shit out, because she don't know what's next. And missing prom, graduation, senior night. It's a lot. But I think the best part of it all is that the ball has been dropped. And as a parent and being inside of this household with my 10 kids, I'm being able to notice things that they told me it wasn't a problem. So I'm learning to take notes and pay closer attention so that whenever this new thing start back, I can address them with the issues that I have, because I've noticed a lot of things that we should have been talked about when it comes to my kids, and we have not addressed it. And I don't wish this on any parent, nobody.
What are you hearing, Sarah, in Memphis?
Well, not only am I talking to my own girls, I'm talking, I had a talk with Jada this morning, and Jada is the first in her family to graduate high school, y'all. And so I don't have to leave my street to see inequities, okay? So I'm seeing parents that I gotta call the school and scream and say, these kids need computers, and they get computers. I'm finding that when you know how to advocate, your kids get what they need. If you sit back and be quiet, your kids don't get, oh, I forgot I was on the show. Your kids get nothing. Your kids get nothing. So I don't have to leave my street to see inequities. So we use this word, but what we gonna do about it? Even the people that can change things using inequity, what they gonna do about it? You know the word, you add that word to your vocabulary, what you gonna do about it? We don't have to leave our street. I don't anyway.
Yeah.
And Curtis, I'm like Miss Sarah, I like to jump in because, we were talking about, what comes next. And that inequity word is a perfect jumping point off or word to jump off on, because there are certain types or certain systems that may be poised to take advantage of the demands, and others that aren't, right? So here it's no secret, our Renaissance schools were created because our traditional system was lagging behind, right? It was just stressed, right? And so there are some types of school, and I see somebody ask where you stand on choice. I believe in choice, but I believe that in that choice, all types must be held accountable, right? Mm-hmm. You can't just have one operating as a public school, but setting its own definition of its population, right? That it's going to serve under that guise. You can't have that, right? And so there are some schools, because they have taken advantage, to Miss Sarah's point, of inequity, right? Of manipulating the system, they're going to be best positioned to take advantage of the technology shift, right? Because they have maybe smaller class sizes, more specialized population, not likely to have a student not retaining information, right, Kim? Because my 5-year-old is going through that. And I'm like you, me and her school, we got problems. And I pay tuition.
Bryan, you didn't let me finish.
But we got to be ready, because there's some people that are going to get left behind. I'm sorry, Miss Sarah.
What do you want to say, Sarah?
I wanted to say that Chaselyn ready to go back to school, the 6-year-old, kindergarten going to first grade. And she ready for first grade, but her mama is struggling with Eureka Math. Who gonna help the parents with Eureka Math? Yeah. That's what my daughter told me.
Now one thing, Carter, and I'm gonna let you have it. That is the piece before COVID happened, the relationships with the parents and the schools was not there. So Keisha and Oakland, Sarah, Bryan, and myself, we can build relationships, but if the school's not building relationships, how do you expect for parents to be able to educate their children during these times? And accountability, no matter what we get and what's next, if there's no accountability, our kids don't move forward, and that's what we've been lacking. We have not.
And we got to realize they putting the most underqualified teachers in front of the most underserved children, y'all. We got to talk about these things.
I think it was important that we kind of put this thing in context. And, I wanted to share with you all the results of the survey, which are pretty right down the middle. This idea of whether we'll innovate versus go to status quo. I mean, there's no clear perspective that we're going to capitalize on this time. I mean, they say in Mandarin, crisis and opportunity are the same word, and that you have to actually look at these times and say, is this an opportunity for us to really innovate because we were pushed this way? And the fear is that we will go back to where it was, which is a lot of the things that you all were fighting for before, and a lot of things that are being exacerbated by this crisis. And I want to throw it to you over to you, Keisha, and particularly a piece of data that I got that said that a survey was done with about 5,000, 6,000 educators, and 35% of those reported that as low as 0 to 25% of their students were actually logging in. These are the folks who have devices and have internet access, and that 55% said that less than half of their students were logging on. And so my question to you, as a mother, an advocate, an educator, if you were elected to the school board in Oakland, what would you do to increase the number of students who are actually getting access to the education they're going to need now, most likely all the way up until January?
I don't know if I'm going to answer this question the way you want me to answer it, but I don't want to be on the school board. I want to push the school board to do what they need to do. I think folks like myself, Kim and Sarah and Bryan, we need to be where we're at. I think, so I'll name that, but let's just say I don't know that I would do things differently than how we do it now. I mean, I just believe in hearing from our families and gathering data. I don't know if we're going to have time to talk about the Reach Relief Fund that we launched, but if we're going to talk directly about this disconnect with technology, one of the things that we're pulling together to launch start next week is a tech survey where our team is going to be getting on the phone with their parents and really, really understanding what's going on with technology. And not just from a Chromebook perspective. I'm honestly less worried about the hardware and more concerned about the connectivity. I'm actually concerned also about no matter what we do to get Comcast to do the right thing, Comcast saying we're no longer going to create restrictions around families who may be past due on bills and actually getting internet in the homes of families. I think that's where our responsibility comes in. We understand those barriers at more levels than some of the conversation that happens up here.
Right.
So we want to understand who has the technology, because to Kim's point, we want one Chromebook to every 2 kids, right? So if she had that in her household, things would be looking a lot different in terms of how the kids share the Chromebook and the work they do. There are families that got 10 kids. And so we need to make sure that that's set up. So that's one. We also want to understand who has internet access. And if they don't have internet access, why don't they? Was it a financial decision? For some folks, you live in a housing situation that don't even allow internet access to be set up in your housing situation. So it's cool if Comcast give you access, but if you can't get the stuff installed in your apartment, then we at square one. So for us, it's so critical to get down to the systemic issues because there's too much conversation happening up here that's about, let's give them better internet, let's get some Chromebooks. But what we're looking at it is like, how do we make sure the kids on it, working on it, internet access going through the house, and the parents are also engaged. And that just requires a different muscle. So part for what we're doing over the next week and a half is surveying all of our families around that and some of those barriers. On top of that, trying to understand the skills. How many of our parents actually know how to use Google Suites, right? Or use Google spreadsheets? They may be able, we want to put them in a position to partner up and help other families. But then we have a lot of families who don't use technology. So where does that come from? So we believe in data to help kind of inform decisions. And I think, you know, Curtis, you and I have talked about this, and we have 15 minutes. I'm always thoughtful. I want to be thoughtful about everyone else's time and comments, but we are designing a virtual family hub. We don't wait on the system. So when people come back to you and say half are status quo, half are innovative, it doesn't mean anything to me. I don't believe that anything will change unless we change it, because this situation is not really designed for our systems to innovate. Our systems are responding to a crisis. I don't believe that our system is responding to innovate around this crisis. So I believe it's the responsibility of organizations like the Reach, the Lift, Parents for Great Camden Schools, and Atlanta Thrive to put the solutions in place to integrate the needs academically that our families have. Also with the sustainability piece, our families was already struggling before COVID, and now it's just worse. So whatever we do needs to make sure that, like, our parents never signed on to decide whether or not they pay the light bill or whether or not they engage in their kids' education. So whatever solutions we put into place needs to integrate those things seamlessly so that our families are feeling more economically stable, as well as feeling like they can really be on top of and build a culture of just engagement around their kids' learning. Prior to COVID, but now with this distance learning. So that's kind of what our approach is in Oakland. And so we're hoping to kind of roll out this like virtual hub pilot in mid-May.
I appreciate that. And I think, you know, those of you who know me, I'm on the school board here. I live in Maryland. And I think it's also important that policymakers like myself and others don't become tone deaf to what's happening on the ground. And I'm just reminded of a conversation I had with you, Kim, earlier this week. And some of the things that you were bringing up to me were educational, and things I just didn't think about. And I asked you, on that call, I said, well, what are some of the things that, policymakers should be thinking about, other than what a lot of us did was sort of say, all right, we're going to hand out Chromebooks, we're going to partner with Comcast, and we're going to, ensure that teachers have lessons. And something you mentioned around parents just having certain skills like how to schedule out their day. A lot of things you mentioned earlier, Keisha. And I think the power of the four of you is that you all have a sort of this antenna into homes, into communities. Oftentimes, policymakers and those who have the power to put money in certain places just don't often listen to, and money gets wasted and time, and we waste a lot of time. And so, I did want to give, Kim and Sarah and Bryan opportunity to say, as we're in this time, where should we be telling people who have the power to put resources where they need to be? Where should those resources be going? We have the CARES Act coming down. There's a lot of money going to be coming down to school systems like you all within the next few months. Where should that money be going, and what policies should you all be advocating for in order to make sure that we have an equitable access to the education that in many ways was not serving our children before COVID?
We are also doing surveys right now too, Curtis, and seeing what parents think to see what policies we need to put our arms around, our minds around. But I know a lot of money coming down, and before COVID, all we heard was they need more money. You on the school board. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I was going to interview you about that. You asked Keisha what would she do if she was on the school board. I mean, I think our school boards, y'all, they got to get out, just like when you was campaigning for my vote. You got to get out and knock on them doors, build relationships with your parents. I know that's not the question you asked, but I had to just say that, because I just believe that money ain't the answer all the time. They done got tons of money, and we were still in the same situation. We go fight for more funding, and our kids still walking in buildings where it's raining in the building, and it's not even worth going in for the kids to learn. I heard a wise woman say, because kids live in poverty, that they should learn in luxury. So, I mean, yeah, I jumped on that school board thing, Curtis, because I know you're on school board. Money ain't always the answer. I mean, I think some of that money should be given for parents to get to learn about how they can help their children. They got to put that in there somewhere. I really do. Because our kids going to suffer in the long run, and we know what kids going to suffer. We know it's going to be poor Black and brown children. I said it right here on your show, Curtis.
Before I throw to you, Kim, I did want to put up our last survey question. And this gets into innovation, and it gets into really pushing policymakers to do things that may not be very popular, but may be important for children. And so the last question is, would you support year-round schools? And this is something that's people are talking about even in Maryland, and I think will be talked about coming around the country. And the question is, do we need to, in order to sort of make up these gaps and to really make up for a lot of the lost time during COVID, should we, take the step towards year-round schooling? We're going to ask that question in a survey, but I did want to throw it to you, Kim, as it relates to really where. And again, you mentioned you have a new superintendent, Dr. Lisa Herring, coming from Birmingham into Atlanta. When you meet with her, what advice are you going to give her as a new superintendent coming into this district post-COVID?
So what advice I would give is to get to know the children and the parents, the people that's close to the problem. Be very hands-on. Be willing to allow the parents to be a part of the bus, like on that driver's seat when it comes to their children, because we're really far behind. And when you talked about like certain plans, what was the question you just put up, Curtis?
A year-round schooling?
Year-round schooling. So when we talk about Atlanta, and Ms. Sarah talk about the money, for me, it's very stressful. One of the things, like school is very stressful throughout the day for my kids. Depending on what area or what school you at, if it's more time, if I'm already dealing with you educating my child and I can't get the services and it's a battle for parents to get in the classroom, I think money should be spent on parent universities to help teach parents techniques. It also should be put in places where teachers are made to, the staff is made to engage kind of like with the community, because if you don't understand the community that you are servicing, you'll never be able to educate those kids. Also with the parents, like Keisha said, if mama can't read on a second grade level and actually help her child, you have to provide those learning environments for parents also, so that we can push our kids. But I think it's the parents, and us as leaders, we have to make sure that people like you that sit in positions to make those decisions for our kids know that it's okay to set the trend to do something different, and to make sure you're making decisions based on children, because it's about the kids here. Yeah.
What about you, Bryan?
I'm sorry, what was the question, Kurt?
No, I mean, as we're coming out of, we're in this COVID, and I think there's resources that are going to be coming down from the federal and state level, and that those who are in positions like mine are going to need voices like yours.
I remember it now. How would we
advise us
advise
on
decision
the way to go.
makers? You know, I think it's going to come, because I see all this. It just feels like there's a scramble right now, right? Keisha said it best. Like, the system is responding to a crisis, and not one that necessarily is pushing it to innovate, right? It's just like, oh, there's a bunch of money, let's just give stuff away, right? So if I was telling educators in New Jersey, what's the best bang for your buck? If we're going to a virtual online, this would be a perfect time to sneak in sort of a universal curriculum, right? At least a state standard, right? Where if I'm a middle school student, I'm learning the same thing Johnny is in Cherry Hill. And because it's taking place virtually, that eliminates the cost difference, right? It's something that we can all do. So I would be pushing for that. Like, this is a great opportunity to finally level the playing field and how we're educating, the type of educators that are able to get in front of the children, and the type of class offerings. Like a university, Kurt, if I'm in New Jersey, I should be able to look up, and for my English requirement, select from English classes being offered in Cherry Hill or wherever, because I'm a New Jersey student. This is the perfect time to finally get around what we've always talked about with voucher learning, right? So that's where I would be pushing.
Well, let me say just, we have about 5 minutes left, and I want to give opportunity for all four of you to sort of give some closing remarks, but I just wanted to say, particularly as based on the survey, so over 75% of those who responded said they would support year-round schooling. There were some comments that I think need to be discussed, which is, Curtis, we can't have a year-round school that's already broken, just have my children more. And teachers that aren't effective and are not culturally competent and are not speaking life into our children.
I totally agree.
Sometimes, oftentimes schools actually are doing more harm than good. And people like, Sri Felmeki and Chris and them talk about this all the time, that some kids are happy to be home because they were having such a bad time in the public school system.
Right.
And we want to make sure that we are protecting our children at the same time. And so this idea of a year-round school, but if it is also bringing addressing a lot of the inequities around the things you're talking about, then this could be possible. It's going to take a lot of courage from people like in my position, but also a lot of advocacy and pushing from you people in your position to get this done. So as we wrap up, I just wanted to just make one final point and give you all just a final opportunity to answer and then give some closing remark, which is, I was listening recently again about Denver, Colorado, and they're looking at potential budget shortfall of as much as $61 million. And a lot of districts are going to be dealing with this, particularly as tax revenues that fund most school systems are going down because of the economy, obviously. And these systems are going to have to respond in many ways by cutting services, closing emerging schools, adjusting bell schedules and bus routes, freezing teacher pay, in some ways reducing expansion of early childhood. And so what the work that you're going to be doing coming out of this is going to look a lot different, I think, in a lot of ways because of the impact this is having. And so my final question to you all, and I want to go around, but also to offer you all to give some final comments is, what are we not paying attention to? Right now that we should be, in order to make sure that when we come out of COVID that we're ready. And so is it, what are we not paying attention to right now? And what can we be doing as advocates, as policymakers, as parents, as researchers to really, putting our mind towards so that when we come out of this, whether it be in the fall or in the spring of next year, we're ready to advocate. And so we're going to start with you, Lakisha, on the West Coast, and again, come back up to Kim and then Sarah and then Bryan with just some final remarks and just your view on where we should be paying our attention coming out of this, when we're going to look at a very different world, which in many ways before this was hurting kids, but in many ways is disproportionately impacted because of funding shortfalls are going to come out of this. And I'll just say this: love to see Bryan there with the little one there, man. I love it. But go ahead, Keisha.
Yeah, thanks, Curtis. So I can't really say about what I think you said something about what are we not paying attention to, more or less of what we need to be paying attention to. I've said to a lot of folks that, like, if you are about the status quo, this is probably a tricky time for you. This is a time for innovators and builders and creators. We have a huge opportunity to be better than we were going into this, because for folks like me, Sarah and Bryan and Kimberly, the fights that we have about how the kid, and not with each other, but with the system and certain factions within the system about how our kids should be educated, them have sort of simmered right now. So some of that divisive politics is kind of simmered because everybody is trying to figure out how to just help kids learn. So because we are the folks closest to the problem, right? I think one of the things is try to learn and understand from us more about what families need. I've had to tell a lot of people there's a big gap between the giver and the folks who need it. And so the giver will be like, I'm gonna get a bunch of gift cards, right? But not realizing that in some of our communities, they don't even accept gift cards, okay? You can't go to Wingstop over by the Oakland airport and use a gift card. So we have to start really understanding and listening to what folks on the ground know, understand, and need, and not just saying, oh, I wanna give and I wanna help. So I think there's a couple of components. One is just that this is a time for those innovative and creative leaders to help us lead the way to a new reality. I think the second component is listening to the families. Listen to the families. If you are in a position to give, listen to our organizations, listening to our communities about what our families and stuff need. And I feel like that's happening really well in Oakland, and I really, really appreciate that. I think the last thing that I think those are probably the two main things that I would share. Here in Oakland, they talk about the continuity of learning. And we say the learning we have received cannot continue. So we are very, very set here at the Oakland Reach to make sure that we are doing some disruption to the learning that's been happening. Why would we be fighting the way that we've been fighting if we wanted the learning to continue? So no continuity of learning. But it's going to require innovation. It's going to require collaboration, and it's going to require listening to parents, which has honestly been a problem in the system, is actually listening to parents. But if you don't have a relationship with parents right now, you're kind of in trouble when it comes to getting to kids. So if the stock of parents have raised itself in any way in any situation, it's definitely this. If you can't get to the mamas, you're not getting that learning done the way you think you are. So that's just kind of my piece on it.
Thank you. And Kim, Sarah, and Bryan, your final comments as well. And we're at 4, but we'll take about 2 or 3 more minutes to give you all a chance to wrap up. Go ahead, Kim.
So for me, I think that the decision makers, and especially like the board members and APS, they have to notice that they have to work with parents. And this is a time during this pandemic, it showed us that no one can do anything alone. So the only way we can do it is if we work together. But we have to be open for change, and be willing to say, I will be the leader and I will set a new trend, and the trend will be for children. And like Keisha said, building relationships. You have to be connected to the families. It's not just about the child. You have to support the whole child. And that's the way we have to move forward if we want to make education good for all our kids.
Thank you so much.
My answer is really short. What people are not paying attention to, hell, the same thing they weren't paying attention to before COVID. Children and families, they not paying attention, because if they was paying attention, look, these people could fix this. So my answer is real short. And Curtis, right quick, since my answer was so short, you're a school board member. You only got 1 vote. I think our board have to figure out, how can I bring my colleagues along? And now everybody had time to think. If you weren't doing right by families that you said you was going to serve, now's the time to get it right.
Amen. Amen.
Yes, Sarah.
Bryan,
that wasn't a preach either, Curtis. That was a statement.
For me, the one thing no one's paying attention to is this is a perfect opportunity to pull some major updates. If you haven't had your school board election yet, and it's upcoming, with the major shift now going to in many states to vote by mail, it potentially shrinks the number of eligible voters, right? So it's a perfect moment to seize power, because what I've heard from my counterparts, and they know me, they know I'm all about seizing the power, right? So it's a perfect time to run candidates. It's a perfect time to be registering voters. It's a perfect time, you know, to be pointing out how the system has failed and crystallizing in other people's minds that it's not a time to wait on the system, Curtis, anymore. I can't wait for Ms. Johnson to get it right. When I got people that think like me and are willing to do like me, I need to replace Ms. Johnson. And this is that moment. The moment, you know, Les Miserables, that moment of revolution is upon us, and we can't continue to sit back and allow a system that has demonstrated over and over its lack of concern for our people or its lack ability to serve our people to continue to hope. That's just foolishness. Now is the moment to seize, and that's what we're not looking at, that this is the perfect moment to seize control and disrupt politically a lot of what's going on in our failing school boards. And that's just it.
I want to thank you all for this conversation. I appreciate you. The energy is always so strong. I mean, we just let a couple hundred people in on a family conversation. You know, I look at the four of you as my cousins. And you know, for those of you who weren't here at the beginning, you know, I'm wearing this shirt in honor of Rachel Willis from Oakland Reach, who gave me this shirt. She was with us the last time we were together in Oakland, a dynamic mother of two, an advocate for her children and for all children. And the spirit that she brought is something that the five of us bring to our own children and to our communities. And I will just end on a powerful word from Lakisha Young, and she says, "Better is just not good enough." And what what Sarah said is, what we had, we can't go back to that. And what Kim said is, you know, we have to listen to parents. Those are the voice of the people. And what Bryan said, you know, revolution now. And so I'll be shipping my Oakland Black Panther shirt to Camden. Get him right on his Huey. But I appreciate y'all. I support y'all. I love y'all like my kin. And you all had a chance to listen in on a conversation that we have offline all the time. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me via email. There were some questions about each of your organizations in some of the comments. And so as I get questions about each of your organizations, people who want to support, who want to donate, who want to volunteer and advocate on your behalf, I will share that with you all individually. I'll just say, please stay safe, stay strong, continue to fight. We need you now more than ever. And you all have an amazing, amazing afternoon and amazing week.
Thank you, Curtis.
Thank you, Curtis.
Thank you, Curtis. Bye, Sarah, Kim, Bryan.
Bye, y'all. Love you guys.
Bye,
Love
y'all.
Love you all. Peace.
See you later.
That's Sloan. Bye.
Bye,
Curtis,
Sloan.
that shirt almost too little for you.
Ah!
I had to throw that in there for free, Curtis. You need to play basketball.
I'm working out. I'm working out over here.
Curtis, you need to play basketball with your son more.
I do that every day.
I'm telling you, man, Curtis, I'm telling you, if we don't watch it, we're going to leave out the house after this over looking like the clumps, man. You too, Bryan, with your little bitty self. You too, Kim. Sloan, thank you so much for accepting me for who I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.